There are two contradictory threads when it comes to victims of domestic violence. They should have control over how and when they tell their story, but they're sometimes in denial about being a victim in the first place. This week, the media found itself uncomfortably perched in the middle of those two opposites. WGBH News reporter Adam Riley has more.
This brutal video makes one thing clear. Janay Rice was the victim of domestic violence, and Ray Rice was the abuser. But in this ESPN piece, Janay Rice challenged that, telling interviewer Jamel Hill she doesn't consider herself a victim. And Hill seemed to buy that logic.
I'm okay with her feeling like she doesn't have to fit the narrative that we have all been sort of taught.
Speaking of narratives, ESPN is taking heat for giving Janay Rice editorial control. But Jamel Hill says that concession was no big deal.
I know people see that language of final approval and they envision this process of her shooting down things not to be in there. But it was in no way was this ever a dictatorship.
ESPN wasn't the only outlet that allowed Rice to spin her situation. During a sit-down with NBC's Matt Lauer, Rice struck an upbeat note.
And if anything, this made us better.
That gave critics the creeps. In the LA Times, Robin Abkarian wrote, Janay rationalizes her husband's behavior in a manner that should send a shiver down your spine. Also surfacing this week, Ray Rice, who says he's a changed man.
I'll be honest, my counselor, what he did was basically rip me apart and build me back together.
Now that Ray Rice's suspension has been overturned, he's free to sign with any NFL team. If that happens, he'll have his wife and the media to thank.
Listen, there is no media outlet, reporter, TV, print in the world that was not going to take an interview with Janay Rice. You can control an interview just to a point. You can't control that she's going to say it was God's will that he, cold-cocked her. There's just no way. You can challenge it politely, but she wants to control that. And the reason she did the interviews, and by the way, that one I think was done several weeks ago, it was time to, they were hoping what had happened with the NFL would happen and he was reinstated. But, this idea that somehow we should be responsible for the content of what somebody says, I'm not totally buying it.
I want to say something positive about ESPN, which in a lot of ways it sort of lurches from one ethical mishap to another. But in this particular case, I thought they handled it well. They had a chance to get an exclusive interview with her. They knew that there were going to be conditions attached to it. They said, let's put her byline on it. It's her story. It's by her. I don't have a problem with that.
No, I do, because it should. If somebody gives you an interview, it's not their story, right? You do a one-on-one with somebody?
Well,
it's your interview. It's your show.
Yeah, well, that's right. But I have to say, I think I agree with Dan.
Yeah.
First of all,
I know.
Her story is what you'll get your turn. All right.
Maybe.
Her story is what it is, and his story is what it is. They're going to say what they're going to say. I don't think that should be just taken and given a nice frosty glaze and handed over to the public without further context. Particularly some context about how often, battered women are in this mode of enabling afterward or covering for the perp, and this is not uncommon. And I think a lot of coverage I've seen of this has given that added context. But I don't think it's necessarily our role, as that one reporter was doing, to sort of sit in judgment as a court on how these people are putting their lives back together. That struck me as a little harsh and presumptive.
Okay, I disagree in this way. If you're going to put her name on it, if it's her story, then let her write it, let the PR people write it, give it to the magazine, publish it like an op-ed.
Like LeBron James did with his
so
thing,
then I read it and I say, that's an op-ed that you wrote with your PR person. I know where that's coming from. Don't be putting Jamel Hill in the middle of it, and then we don't quite know what she was allowed to take out or soften or not. That, to me, is problematic. It really is. And I don't think, I'm going to stick up for the reporter who's, I don't believe is sitting in judgment, but she's basing her response and her commentary on what she knows to be true, documented evidence of what happens with these domestic violence. I don't want to call her a victim, but a survivor in this moment. This is what it had. Listen, and I'm all due praise for Janay. Do what you got to do to save your life, girl. Do it. But don't like make us feel like we think that that we believe that. You know, I think it's okay to say that. But if she wants to tell her story and believe and say it the way she did, then you say it yourself and don't put a reporter in the middle of it.
Right. I think it's really wrong for ESPN. I think it is always wrong to write something up and then go to the subject and say, what do you think? Like, here's final approval. That is just, I find that to be totally unacceptable. All right, that's that story. Then there's Matt Lauer in the Today Show. Yeah. And I think this is hard, and this is true with presidents too. You are always going to go to the person who you think is going to give you the most softball questions. So not only is Matt Lauer trying to earn his stripes with Janay Rice, but he's also trying to advertise to any other potential interviewees who are out there in the future and who are going to go back and look at this tape. That was a pretty softball interview. You should go on that show. You know,
it's like the new Larry King.
Exactly, who likes every movie. You know, and so I think there's this incentive to not ask the really hard questions. And I mean, look, I mean, there was a great thing on The Root that pointed out, really, the first time this person was hit was when it was caught on camera. Does that really seem plausible to you? But, you know, a lot of times the hard-hitting things don't get asked.
Yeah.
I mean, would it have been cruel for somebody to say, listen, you're not getting it. You were a victim. And even though she doesn't see herself that way, but should Matt Lauer have done that?
I don't know.
Would you have done it?
I don't know, but the other thing that's happening, I mean, they would have never given me the interview, but I think I would have also said, in this interview, isn't everything financially on the line for you here? I mean, you're trying to get your husband back into the NFL. I mean, if he doesn't have a career, I don't think there's an alternate thing.
Well, actually, I don't even think it's about it is, but it's really about people. It is really about what she has to do to keep that man off of her. You know, and she has got to be right up front, being as supportive as she's got to be. That is what all of the documentation tells us. If they happen to be the happy exception, believe me, I'd be thrilled.
You're
just
doubting it.
Don't think so. And this, you know, I had a cousin in the same situation. I've written and talked about it. And the lengths that she went to hide and to say and to enable, I'm just telling you.
Well, I doubt it too, but I think there's limits to what the media can do in a situation
Oh, I do
like
too.
this.
But I said there was an option. Write it yourself, give it to him, publish it in ESPN. Then we're done here.
And that is it for our show. Thank you. Tell us what you think. Should the media side with protesters against police brutality? Should Rolling Stone better explain what went wrong on the UVA story? Weigh in on our website, beatthepress.org. You can also catch up on past episodes or watch any of this show you may have missed. I'm Emily Rooney. Thanks for joining us.